Hi, welcome to this preview video for a brand new game called Crown of Ash. This is a brand new game hitting crowdfunding soon, and it's a game that uses two of my favorite mechanisms, and these are the worker placement and deck building in a very interesting way. The game design is fairly simple, extremely simple rules, but the game has a lot of depth and a lot of strategy and a very interesting, fast and meaningful combat system. The theme of the game is all around a universe, and it has a fantastic story that you can spend time reading the first page of the book, getting you into the theme and getting you to understand what's going on. I can really see a whole universe evolving from this idea. It looks really cool and interesting, and hopefully we'll see more games out of that. But coming back to Crown of Ash, this is a game that puts player into the shoes of warlords that they have been deceived by the king, and now they have become cursed and become necromancers. So they raise their warriors from the dead, trying to fight again for conquering and wearing the Crown of Ash, as the title indicates. The game has very simple rules. It plays very fast. It's only 4 rounds, and each round you'll be sending minions to do your bidding for the worker placement aspect, essentially trying to raise resources, to resurrect dead fighters so that you can put them into your pool, and here's the deck building aspect, and then to also try to build structures, own them by taking control of them, and by initiating combat to get them and snap them from out of other players' grasp, because every round, in each of the 4 rounds, you gain victory points from the structures you control. So there's going to be a lot of interaction in this game, and this is a game that really favors player interaction. So if you like player interaction, this is something specifically that you will enjoy, I think. But among all the highlights of the game is the very clean and straightforward system. So not many rules, just enough, but enough to make it interesting and strategic. So there is no lack of depth in this game, even though everything seems natural and straightforward. I think this is done because of the way the game is designed. It's designed in a way to play fast, to be meaningful, to put players against each other, to have a lot of direct player conflict. So if you like that, like me, then it's up your alley. And then to build your strategy, trying to gain resources, try to use them wisely in order to gain new fighters, and then to build structures and benefit from the victory points. There is a lot of tension, and even though the game does not have a mechanism of tug of war, it feels like a tug of war game, because you'll be switching possession and control of different regions and structures a lot in this game, but not in a way that is not meaningful, because if you defend your structures well, then you have a very high possibility to win battles, and when players attack you, you will be able to defend yourself and keep those structures for you. So it's up to the player how they organize their I don't know, strong army of necromancer and undead units in order to defend what makes what matters most. On top of that, the center of the game, as you would expect, is of particular interest because it has a Citadel, and the Citadel offers a variety of victory points, increasing from round to round all the way to the maximum victory points at the end, the 4th round. So this gives a lot of additional things to look for. And the combat is very simple. The defender always has their defending, let's say, units committed, and they can rearrange them if they do amending of through specific actions in the game and put different and stronger units there. But you know what you're defending with, and the opponent knows what you're attacking, what they are attacking with, because they have their hand in its secret. So you need to be careful to make good defense when you want to. The game also has the combat cards, which is a very nice system because it gives me, in a way, some kind of feel from I don't know, Kemet maybe, which really puts a spark into the combat. But also gives rewards to both winning and losing players depending on which card they used. You can get your cards faster back if you assign one of your worker placement, the 4 ones that you have in the course of the round, to get them faster, so you use the better cards again. So you have to balance this out. And on top of all this, the game really flows well. So going faster in this game is important, because turn order is important, because then you get to recruit better, or those exact fighters that you were looking for to recruit before the other players all gather from or take the actions from the more desired, let's say, worker placement spots. But going later in this game is also beneficial, because then you get to attack other players and get the benefit of gaining the structures and taking control of the territories. So the balance here is really nice and offers a very unique dilemma continuously, a lot of interaction and very interesting choices to the players. So there you have it. Let's come back on the table. Join me, I'll show you how the game plays. I'm going to put a link in the description of the video for the crowdfunding campaign. This is prototype material, but it will explain fairly every detail of the game, so it's like a rulebook replacement. I'm going to put timestamps so you can quickly jump from one place to the other, depending on if you want to see specific things from the explanation. And then I'm going to come back at the end of this video for a final wrap-up about the game. So join me and let's see how Crown of Ash plays. For decades, the kingdom was ruled over by the watchful eye of the king from his central citadel, while his lords maintained the outer lands in a peaceful partnership, keeping stability and prosperity within the realm. As the popularity of the lords grew, so did their power. The king became envious and bitter. With every report of their success, he imagined their greedy hands reaching further for his crown. The idea of it consumed him, poisoning every thought, shadowing every pleasure, until finally he vowed to bring an end to the coalition. With a network of spies and undesirables, he turned the lords against each other. Before long, war swept across the kingdom and destruction greater than the king ever anticipated. With embers in his eyes, he watched from his great tower as the land burned to ash and disruption spread. The lords were left in ruin. Desperate, the lords met to discuss a truce. Under the tattered tents, a sour wine flowed, and talk turned to the start of the war. The king's treachery was uncovered. It was too late for them to take revenge. The treasuries were emptied and their armies decimated. Instead, to give the land time to heal, they turned to forbidden arcane arts. An alchemist was called to prepare a vial made to an ancient recipe. It promised to give the lords a silent death like slumber for 100 long years. Once they returned, the kingdom would be made anew. As each took their drink and fell into sleep, the true effects of the vial revealed itself. The king's last betrayal. It gave their nightmarish dreams and pain so tortuous that their minds were turned in torment. When they finally awoke, the once benevolent lords were gone, replaced by violent creatures in hideous forms, and one single desire to take the land for themselves. Unbeknownst to the king, the vial had given them a dark knowledge, long forgotten alchemy that would allow them to raise armies from the dead, bringing new life to the buried corpses of the first war and marching them into a second. They would rebuild the strongholds of the kingdom and drain the lands to feed their power. The Citadel awaited them. The four lords, now vile creatures with nightmarish looks, were the following. We had Visio, the Watcher, which is over here. Before the Great Fall, there wasn't a decision made or deal done without Visio knowing. Then we had Nox, the Nocturnal, which is this lord over here. Once the sun set on the kingdom of Ash, the corrupt and wicked filtered into the streets. They answered to only one, Nox. Then we had Morse, the magistrate, which is this guy over here. Once keeper of law and administrator of justice among the kingdom, to meet Morse was to meet death herself. And then we had Fortis, the defender. The ancient labyrinth of ramparts and traps that ensured peace in the kingdom for centuries would be nothing but dust without the work of Fortis. So these are the four lords that players assume their roles into the Crown of Ash. A game coming to crowdfunding soon. I'm going to add a link in the description of the video so that you can follow the campaign and find out more about the game. I'm also going to add timestamps in the description of the videos for quick jump and navigation as per chapter. So first of all, without further ado, let's familiarize ourselves with the components of the game. First of all, we have the game board. The game board, as it is, this is a prototype, and in the prototype form it has two sides. I think this is going to be a matter of a stretch goal to be unlocked during the campaign of the game. I'm not sure if they're going to go with this view or the one which has less art on the back. I do really prefer this one, and I think in a recent poll most of the audience also preferred this one, so this looks really nice, by the way. But in any case, let's also focus and highlight that this is a prototype. It may look very nice and very beautiful, but still it's a prototype, so a lot of changes may happen from here till final production. Keep that in mind. Nowadays it's difficult to think of that when the prototypes coming in, they're really looking very beautiful like this one in front of you. So for the moment, let's proceed with the components. First of all, they have the main board, which has different spots. Maybe a quick mention on the anatomy of the game board, which will come back and make more sense once we explain the game. First of all, we have the raisable fighter tier 1 for these 3 slots, tier 2 for these 2 slots, and tier 3 for this slot. This may be on the top of the game board, or they may be within the board itself in a later version from pictures I've seen on the net. Doesn't matter. In any case, essentially these are the fighter offer, the market, let's say, from where you can gain more fighters in the course of the game. We have a gold resource space, which is a location over here where you send your worker to gain gold. It's always available for no matter the number of minions. Many players can go there and take the action. We have the defending fighter positions, like this one, for example, or take fighters to defend the different positions. For example, from setup, as we're going to explain, we already started with occupying and controlling one location. In this case, this player is controlling the village. That's why they have their control marker here. And there are always 2 slots in each region for fighters to defend the control and the structures here, as we're going to explain. So all these card holder slots are considered to be defending fighter positions. We also have the initiate combat worker space for worker placement, which is over here, here, wherever you see these swords crossing each other. This is a location for you to initiate combat. We're going to explain this later on. We also have the region control indicator, which is an area like this one or this one to indicate to who this control goes to. For the moment, this will change frequently during the course of the game. We have the structure location. Players start with a starting location, a starting structure, and these are all locations for the structures. There is a variety of structures as well to be built, and on top of the structures as well, and these are spots for the structures. We also have the build structure worker space. This is where you put your minion for building structures, and this is over here with the hammer, as it will make sense. And last but not least, we have the Citadel in the center of everything, connecting all the 6 regions. So this is a game board, and I should mention that we also have 4 player mats, 1 for each player, as you have seen. And quickly, to give you a very brief overview, let's say, of the game board. This is a recessed board, by the way, and this is really nice and very practical. Around the board you have the victory point track. Each player has their own, so they start with this cube here, and depending on the amount of victory points they accumulate during the course of the game, they progress around the edge of the board. We also have the resource storage area, which is over here. Here is an area where you store all the resources, and the resources in the game are 4 types. We're going to explain them later on. We also have the combat card refresh space. This is a worker placement spot. You send your minion here to refresh your combat cards even before they're depleted, because then you can take them all up into your hand. But if you want to do that sooner, for using some combat cards, again, you need to assign a worker in this spot. You also have the combat card discard area, which is over here. For all your combat cards, they go there, face up. Only the players can only see your top combat card visible, and they cannot get your discard pile to shuffle them, to go through it. You also have the fighter graveyard, which is here. These are cards, area for the cards that they go in your graveyard, and then at the end of the round they come into your hand, because we're necromancers in a way. And these are spots for your minions, where you're going to start the game with 4 minions available, which they will do the worker placement for you. Then we have the round tracker board, which is over here. Again, very quick anatomy. It has a tiered fighter decks, tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3. These are the respective decks that populate this market, as shown you before. I'm going to explain during setup. We have the round marker track, which this game is played over 4 rounds, so 1, 2, 3, 4 till the full moon, and this is the round tracker marker. We have the Citadel victory points. Players gain victory points for many things in the game, but also for controlling the Citadel at the end of each round, and these points are increasing dramatically, all the way from 4 to 7 for the 4th and last round. We also have the player turn order track, which is over here. These are the logo, the crests, if you wish, of the players in their respective colors. And last but not least, we have also the respective round marker, as I mentioned, which is used here to track the respective round of the game. So we also have 36 fighter cards. These are 24 erasable and 12 starting. I'm just going to show you the starting cards for a player, let's say, but this is the game really works a lot around the fighter cards. They provide different strength and they belong to different suits, and they will give you different abilities and different combat value, if you wish, for you to fight, and you can get better ones as you would expect. So players will start with one of the starting ones, defending their first initial tile that they have in their hand, and two more in their hand, and they will acquire more in the course of the game for them to conquer and gain control of different regions. Each player has 25 combat cards. There are 20 combat cards in total. Okay, so each player has, let me show you the blue ones, 5 of those. Again, they have the logo of the player on the back, and they have different strengths, advantages and disadvantages. They give different rewards if you win and different drawbacks if you lose. Okay, and they contribute different amount of strength as well, but we'll explain this over the course of the combat section of the game. Again, each player has 5, and these are driving together with other things the combat section of the game. There is one king card, which is this one. This is a king, and it has a strength of 5 and starts in the Citadel. He's not going to stay there for long, trust me. But you need to defeat him in order to kick him out to begin the game. We also have 6 fate cards. Each player starts a game with one random fate card, and each card, it's secret and only visible to you, has a different combination of 2 of the suits of the fighters. So in this case, let's say the yellow fighters and the black fighters. So depending on the cards you have at the end of the game, you're going to gain additional victory points. We're going to explain those. So this is the back of the fate card. We also have 6 solo mode cards, which are over here, and it is for the solo. We have 16 minions, again 4 per player color, and these are really nice custom minions, which they are also different with different stuffs for each player. You need to follow the campaign page for details, but they look really nice. If these are the ones that are going to be included in the base game, they look really great. There are also 7 control tokens per player for a total of 28. These tokens again depict the crest of the player, and they go in the different locations. Once you gain control of the different regions, which we're going to explain later on, you indicate with those for which you have control, and each player has 7 of those. And last, we have 1 turn order token per player with the crest of the player. The resources in the game, we have 20 bone cubes and 2 tokens for bulk bone tokens. These are the white ones. We have sulfur, which are the yellow ones. We have blood tokens, which are these ones, and we have ash tokens, which are the black ones. These are the 4 resources of the game. The game comes with 24 structure tiles. You see, or you don't see actually, because it's off screen, it's a huge game. It's a very big board and a lot of components, but it's really, really nice. So these are the structures of the game, and they depict different types of rewards and resources to collect and victory points. We're going to explain them. We have at the bottom a display of those, which I'm going to show during setup, with 4 visible. And there are also some starting ones, the ones with the asterisk. Each player starts with one and take control of the respective region. We also have 24 gold coins over here. And last, we have 8 bolster tokens that go over there, 2 dice, 150 victory points, tokens for each player when they go more than 50 points. And this is very nice, creepy, but beautiful starting player marker. Looks really nice because the hand is coming off the ground, since we are necromancers and we're raising again our fighters to come and fight our wars. So there you have it. These are all the components of the game. Setup. First, we place the game board centrally in reach of all players. We give each player a player mat, like this one, and the corresponding control tokens, minions, and combat cards in their player color, in their faction color. We place a score tracker cube on 0 of each player mat. They're going to be tracking the victory points, so they start at 0 victory points. Each player has their own victory points on their player mat. And we place the round tracker next to the board, clearly visible to all players, showing the side of the correct amount of players. So this is a 3 to 4 side, indicated on the bottom left of the round tracker. And then we take the round marker. This game is played over 4 rounds. On top we're tracking the round, and we're placing the round tracker marker on the first round. Then we separate the fighter cards into 3 decks by the Roman numerical numbers at the base of the cards: Latin 1, Latin 2 and Latin 3. These are the cards I have already separated here based on the Latin number on the bottom of the card, 1, 2 or 3. These are tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3. We shuffle them and we place them above the round tracker board on their corresponding slot. As you can see, this is a slot for 1, 2 and 3 respectively. We shuffle each of the decks and we place them face down next to the indicated area of the turn tracker, creating 3 tiered fighter decks as I mentioned. We populate then the raisable fighter areas on the board with cards from the corresponding tiered decks. These, I remind you, are over here in this prototype, physical prototype. They are on the top of the board. I've seen again in other instances they may be located between the regions, specific designated slots, but in any case, for the moment, for this prototype, it says 1, 1, 1, so I'm drawing 1 card for each of those slots from tier 1, 2 and 2, so 2 cards from tier 2 go there, and a very stronger fighter goes on the tier 3 spot over there from the respective deck. Then, from the starting fighter cards previously set aside, matching the player colors, and you can see that they're matching the player colors because they have the player color here, and at the bottom they see there is the logo of the respective faction, in this case the blue colored faction. So from those we deal 3 to each player, matching their player color, and then from those 3 we, of course, if we're playing a less than a 4-player game, we return the non-played colors back into the box. But then we take those cards and we decide one of those that are going to defend our starting structure, but more of that later. So for the moment we have 3 starting fighter cards corresponding to our faction. We place the king card centrally in the Citadel, central region on the game board. This is the Citadel, and the king starts there, protecting the Citadel for the beginning of the game. And then we shuffle and deal a single fate card face down to each player and return the rest to the box. Again, this is the back of the fate card. This is given to each player face down, so only the player knows the 2 colors of the 2 fighter types that they're going to gain additional victory points at the end of the game, but they keep it face down next to their playing area respectively. Then we remove the 4 starting structure tiles indicated with a star on the tile itself, and we deal randomly 1 to each player. In a 2-player game we deal 2 to each player, and in a 3-player game we return the spare tile to the game box. So each player they're going to take 1 of those starting structure tiles. Each player places their starting tile on the matching location on the board, so this one would go over there on top of this area. The same goes for the rest. And then we place the control token into the region to show ownership of the region. That means that for the blue player, they will place the control token there to indicate ownership of this whole region. And from their hand of starting fighter cards, they're going to select and place a single strength 1 fighting starting fighter from their hand. So they cannot place the 2 strength, they have to select from those 2, and they're going to place it on the one of the 2 spots defending their structure. The rest are going to be still in their hand, together with their face down fate card. Then we divide the remaining structure tiles by tier 1 and tier 2 as indicated on the back of the tile. We shuffle each of the sets separately and place face down in a single stack next to the corresponding area of the base of the board, with tier 2 tiles at the bottom and tier 1 tiles on the top. These go over here, which is actually the pool of structures that are going to be used in the game. From that pool we populate the 4 slots, revealing the 4 first structures that are going to be available for the players to buy and build respectively. As I mentioned, we take the round turn tokens of the players and we randomly distribute them into the round tracker to indicate the player order for the first round. Then we place a round marker on the first leftmost round indicator on the round tracker over here to indicate that we're playing round 1. And last we place the resource, gold, dice and bolster tokens in reach of all players. We give 2 gold to each player that they're going to be keeping here on their player mat respectively, together with the resources they have. And we give the active player, in this case it's going to be the pink one, but let's say it was the green one, the starting player token for the round, so they're going to be the first player to start the game. Gameplay overview. On a player's turn, they assign a single minion to do their bidding. They perform the action associated with the assigned worker space, then at the end of their turn, optionally, they can raise a single fighter. There are 4 actions that the minion can trigger, and these are the following. First of all, gather. A player can send a minion on a gather spot, like this one, for example, sending their minion during their turn, in order to gain resources needed to later recruit powerful undead fighters. In this case, they would gain 1 bone and 1 blood, as indicated by the tile. More on that later, and place it on the player board. Another option a player has for their minion placement, a single minion placement during when they're active player, they can perform a build action. They can send one of their minion on the build spot, and again they can do that even if a player previously has already used this spot. The difference is these spots over here for collecting resources have a small circle, so only 1 can fit there, and potentially 2 if you're playing a higher player count, more on that later. But the ones like this or that are larger circles that they can accommodate any number of minions. So if it's my turn to be active player, I can decide to send one of my minions here and perform the build action. What does a build action do? You build and improve structures to offer better resources and earn additional victory points. So I'm going to select one of the buildings from the display at the bottom of the board, pay the amount of gold in order to build or upgrade this building and place it in either in an occupied region and then take control, or on top of a structure on a region that I already control. More on that later. Another option a player can do during their turn is to battle. Simply they send one of their minions onto one of these locations which have the cross swords in order to initiate battle. You march fighters into battle to take control of other players' structures. So this structure, this region and the respective structure belongs to that player, obviously, from the control marker. So by sending in one of those 2 attack spots, worker placement spots, a minion, you will be able to have a chance to battle in order to gain the ownership of the region and the structures. Or you can do refresh. So during your turn, you can select to place a minion on this spot over here. Maybe it's not that visible. Let me show you on another player board. Each player board has their own spot over here. So by placing, now it's better, a worker minion over there, then by doing so, what you're able to do is you can take any number of combat cards discarded on your discard combat area back into your hand, so they are immediately available without the need to wait for all of them to be used in different combat cards. But for doing so, you need to assign one of your minions there and perform the refresh. At the end of their turn, before passing the active player marker, which is this one, because they were the active player, a player can raise a single fighter from the 6-1 available to him or her respectively by spending the corresponding resource shown on the card. So if I were to recruit this one, I would need to spend 4 bones as indicated on the card. Then I will pass the active player token to the next player to take their turn. How to win. Crown of Ash takes place over 4 rounds. A round ends after all players have completed assigning all of their minions. Victory points are then gained based on each player's controlled structures and for the central citadel, if occupied. Players then retrieve all their minions from the board, resurrect any fighters from the graveyard on the personal player board back to their hand and clear the biddable structure tiles ready to begin the next round. At the end of the 4th and final round, in addition to the controlled structures and citadel occupation, players also score victory points for the fate cards, the one that they have from the player from the game setup, for additional victory points and any resources on the player mat. We're going to cover endgame scoring in a bit. The winner is a player who has earned the most victory points, proving themselves the most worthy lord and seizing the crown of the Kingdom of Ash. In the result of a tie, the tied players add victory points for the other 2 kinds of fighters not shown on their fate card, and then calculate again the tiebreaker. Resources. We have basic resources. Through the art of alchemy, the dead will rise. There are 4 basic resources in the game, and these are used to raise undead fighters to join your forces. We have bone with white, we have ash with black, sulfur with yellow, and blood with red, of course. How to gather resources? Simply, to gather resources, a player places a minion onto a vacant space on the desired structure, like this one, and they immediately gain the resources, the corresponding resources offered by that specific structure from the supply and place them on their storage area on their playmat. In this case, they would earn 4 bones, as indicated by the respective spot. This would go on the storage saving area of their player board, which is the one on the left, for resources over here. Also keep in mind that dashed spaces are available only in a 3 or 4 player game. So if you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, these are also available, and you can also send a minion there to collect resources. The owner's tax. If using a structure controlled by another player, the owner immediately gains the owner's tax shown on the right side of the tile from the supply in the right banner over here. So this is the owner's tax. So if a player uses a structure that they control, they do not gain the owner's tax, but instead they can amend their defending fighters. We'll see how amending fighters works later on. But let's say this is a 4-player game, and in this case this player is sending their minion here, so they're going to gain 1 sulfur and 1 ash. And since this is a structure not belonging to them, it belongs to the blue player is going to gain also the owner's tax, which in this case is 1 sulfur resource, again from the supply. If, let's say, for the benefit of the example, this building was again owned by the blue player and they wanted to use their own building, they will not gain the owner's tax, they will still gain 1 ash and 1 sulfur, since this is the rewards of the structure. But instead of earning the owner's tax, they would have the possibility to amend their fighters, which again we're going to explain later on in more detail. A word about the special ingredients. Special ingredients have this icon over here, the one with the question mark. Combat cards and some structures offer special ingredients. These are ingredients that allow the recipient to choose any basic resource from the supply. So if any player is using this player's structure, the owner's tax would be 1 blood and 1 resource of their choice among sulfur, bone, blood and ash, the basic ones. Gold. The gold is of course the noblest of the 7 metals, with the power to create and corrupt. With gold, the ruins will be rebuilt and the land will provide once again. Gold is an incredibly valuable resource in the kingdom. It's primarily used to build or improve structures, but also can be used instead in its place of any other resource to raise fighters to your cause. So for example, let's say that I want to raise this fighter, which again, at the end of my turn as an active player, I can raise any fighter. In order to raise this fighter, I need to pay 4 bones. Let's say I only have 3 bones to pay. I can decide to use 1 gold instead of the 4th bone required. So this would be enough for me to pay for the 4 bones and recruit this fighter to my arsenal. How to gain gold, you may ask? Gold is always available by placing a minion onto the larger resource space on the top of the board, over here. As you can see, there is no limit to the amount of minions that can use the space, but the most effective way to obtain gold is through participating in combat as a reward mainly. We will cover combat later, but let's say I won a combat with this combat card. My reward will be to gain 3 gold as well. Fighters. We have fighters all around the kingdom. So let's see the anatomy of the fighter card. First of all, we have the fighter kind, which is depicted on the top triangle, depicting the type. Then we have the attack value, which is depicted on the top left side in a circle. This is a strength of 1, and this is a attack value strength of 3. Then we have the required resources over here at the bottom. These are the resources needed to resurrect and acquire and pay for to buy this fighter if you wish. This is a starting one, that's why it doesn't have any resources. And last but not least, we have the fighting tier, which again is depicted here at the bottom. This is a fighter tier 1. As I mentioned, you can have fighter tier 2 or fighter tier 3, which of course they're more expensive to resurrect, but they do provide much more attack value to combine for your attacks. The attack value, all fighters have an attack value displayed on the top left of the card ranging from 1 to 6. So the minimum is 1 and the maximum is 6 that you can have. And the fighter with a higher attack value is more valuable, as you would imagine. The higher the score, the more powerful the fighter is in combat. Raising fighters. To fight and die in the service of your lord was a great honor, an honor that no one expected to experience more than once. At the end of the player's turn, if they have the necessary resources, they may raise a single fighter from the 6 available to them by paying the respective cost shown at the bottom of the fighter card. The player returns the resources shown on the base of the desired fighter card to the supply and takes the card into their hand. In this case, I would pay 3 blood, 3 bones and 3 ash, and I can always substitute any missing resource of the basic ones for a gold, or even more than that, as long as I have a lot of gold, and then I can acquire a single fighter card, but only a single card, any of the 6. Fighter kinds. There are 4 kinds of fighters corresponding to each of the basic resources of the game. For each of the kinds, the matching resource always forms a large portion of its resource requirements. So for example, you see, this is the yellow, the black, the white, and the red, and they all correspond to the basic resources. And in this case, the yellow is a sulfur, so a large portion of the requirements is in sulfur. For this one, a large portion of the requirement, single requirement here, is in ash, bones because it's white, and blood because it's red. Again, 4 kinds, 1 for each of the basic resources. Grouping fighters of the same kind, again, same kind on the top of the fighter card, is not required, but matching fighters in combat adds additional attack value, +1 for a pair, +2 for a set of 3. So for example, if I have in combat those 2, normally my attack value would be 1 + 3, 4, but because I have a pair of the same kind, I get +1. So here my attack value is 1 + 3, 4, +1 for the pair equals 5. And if I have 3 of a kind, again the same kind, yellow, sulfur in this case, my value would be 1 + 3, 4, +4, 10, +2 for having 3 of a kind, for a total of 12. Replenishing fighters. Once a fighter is raised, the empty position in the row of available fighters to recruit is, of course, immediately replenished with a new fighter from the tier deck that matches the symbol at the space of the board, 1, 2 or 3. If there are no fighters left in the corresponding tier deck, which again are on top of the round board, so tier 1 deck replenishes a tier 1 spot, tier 2 replenishes tier 2 spots, and tier 3 replenishes tier 3 spots respectively, vacant spots. If there are no fighters left in the corresponding tier deck because any of those decks has finished, then you replenish from the neighboring deck of the lowest available value. So if 1 is empty, you replenish from 2. If 2 is empty, you replenish from 1. If 3 is empty, you replenish from 2. If 2 decks are empty, you replenish from the remaining deck. And once all decks are empty, the space is left empty. Structures. So, what are structures? Mighty towers once stood looming over the land like loyal knights in full plate armor, but now long abandoned and fallen to ruins. The process of rebuilding will be costly. Structures determine what resources are available to gather from the game board as the structures are property of the player who controls them. A player controls them will be determined. A player who controls more structures than other players will gain more victory points, and they will receive those points at the end of each round. So let's see the breakdown and the anatomy of the structures. Let's focus on this one, for example, or maybe even better, let's take one non-starting one. So we have first of all here the gold cost. So in this case this costs 1 gold. These have star because these are starting structures. We have the victory point value, which is on the bottom left. So this will award 2 victory points at the end of each round. We have in the center the resource offered. So if you do worker placement beneath that structure, say it was here and you place your worker there, you would gain the resources in the middle, in this case 2 bones and 1 blood. Here's the owner's tax. If it's owned by another player, and you use their structure by worker placement, the owner will gain the owner's tax. And then we have the structure tier, which dictates and indicates at the back which tier it is. It could be tier 1 or tier 2, or even starting structures. How you build structures. To build or improve a structure, a player places a minion into the building space location at the base of the game board. This is this location here, which has the hammer. So, by placing a minion there, you will be able to build or improve a structure. The player then pays the amount of gold displayed on the top left corner of the desired structure from the 4 face-up available structure tiles at the bottom of the board. There is a display of 4 available structures to build every time, and you will of course be choosing from those available in order to build. And keep in mind that for this spot, for building spot, when you send your minions, there is no limit to the amount of minions that can use this build space, as it is a large circle compared to the small circles below the structures for collecting resources. There is an immediate gain upon building or improving a structure. Let's say that for the benefit of example, let's say I selected this structure, I paid 1 coin, okay, so I'm building it. I'm going to explain where I build it, but for the moment just let's say I build it here. There is an immediate gain upon building or improving a structure. That player immediately gains the resource offered by that structure, which means in this case, if I'm the one building it, I will gain 2 bones and 2 ash, because it's the immediate gain. So placement. Purchased structure tiles are placed in uncontrolled regions or on top of any structure already controlled by the player. So in this case this was valid because this structure is already controlled by me, and I can place it on top of that. I could also be placing those in an uncontrolled area. So let's say this was not controlled yet, okay, and I decide, and there is no fighters there, or there is no control, whatever. So I can decide to build it on an uncontrolled area, and by doing so I immediately gain control and place my control token. And then the player may immediately add up to 2 fighters from their hand to defend this structure. So I took control of this one because I either built or improved and then I can place up to 2 fighters to defend the structure which I just built. If, let's say, for example, the region is already controlled, the player places a new structure tile on top of it, on top of the existing structure, and like doing so, let's say I build this structure, I pay the resources, again, I put it here, I gain the reward, and then if I control this region, which I do, I may immediately amend my fighters, and I'm going to explain how amending my fighters means. Essentially, I can reorganize them so that I can better defend it, but I can do amending only then. Then also immediately replace the vacant purchase structure with a new tile from the stack, so you can always have an offer of 4 to build from. Defending structures. Throughout the game, players will always try to attempt to attack and gain control of other players' structures. So only fighters already placed into the region when attacked can defend it. So players should ensure that structures are appropriately defended in advance. Defending fighters can only be changed by amending fighters, as we explained, and we'll show how this is done in practice later on. So players may choose to leave a region undefended, and undefended structures have an attack value of 0. Defending players must still use a combat card and retain the advantage of winning in a tie if attacked, but then they don't have any attack value to defend. So this is a weak point. As I mentioned, we have structured tiers. Buildable structures comes from 2 tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. At the start of the game, only tier 1 structures will be available, which will offer fewer resources and less VP than tier 2. At the end of each round, the face-up buildable structure tiles are cleared. So all these, at the end of the round, any of the 4 rounds, these 4 buildings will be cleared and new buildings will be placed in its spots to offer new possibilities for the players. You see, this offers 2 gold, for example. Or these have as an owner's tax reward, if you use my building and I own these, a resource of my choice. If there are no tiles left in the stack, you shuffle the set aside tiles and create a new stack to draw from. In order of uniqueness, we have a unique structure. The resurrection structure doesn't offer resources. Let me locate it for you so that you can see. So we have this structure, which is a tier 2 structure, and has this art. This is a resurrection structure which doesn't offer resources but allows a player to immediately return a single fighter from their graveyard to their hand. And upon being built, the player can immediately return a single fighter from their graveyard to their hand, and they may immediately amend using this fighter. This is very, very useful because you can also amend when this is built. Victory points. At the end of each round, players will score the victory points value of all the structures under their control shown on the bottom left tile. So let's say in this case, this player has 2 structures, this structure and that structure. This gives them 2 victory points, and this gives them 2 victory points. In addition to the face value, 1 victory point is scored for each structure tile covered over by the top tile. So that means in this case there is nothing covered, so only 2 victory points, but in this case it will be 2 victory points plus 1 for 3 total victory points. Or if it goes like that, I would gain again the face value, 2 victory points, plus 2 victory points 4, and for this one we'll gain 1 victory point for each tile beneath, no matter how many victory points they offered if they were facing up. Okay, so 2 plus 1 for a total of 4 for this stack. Always you get the full face value. Amending Fighters. When a player builds on or gathers resources from a structure they control, they can amend the fighters defending that region. The player can add or exchange fighters with ones from their hand or remove the existing fighters entirely, returning them to their hand. For example, if I build with a build action and I choose this one because I can build on top of that because I control it, I cannot build on top of locations that other players control, so I could never build here, for example, overbuild, because it's controlled by that player. But when I build on a structure that I control, or when I send a minion to gather resources, I send my minion to gather resources from a structure I control. On top of everything explained, I have the possibility to amend my fighters. Basically, I can take these all together on my hand, I can rearrange them so I can strengthen my position or weaken my position and so on, depending on how valuable this is for me and how much I want to defend it or risk it. So this is always important to remember. The Citadel. What is a Citadel? The once beating heart of the thriving kingdom, the Citadel now stands as a monument to its destruction. The Citadel is at the center of the game board and is occupied at the start of the game by the king. This is the king. It has a strength of 5, as you can see. So the Citadel doesn't offer any resources, but instead awards a significant amount of victory points at the end of each round to the player occupying it. The amount of victory points are depicted on the round. So for the first round it's 4, for the second is 5, the third is 6, and the fourth round is 7. The first player to conquer the Citadel must defeat the king. The attacking player must use a single combat card and up to 3 fighters to beat the king's attack value of 5. The king does not use a combat card. The player resolves their combat card as normal and if victorious returns the king to the game box and moves all attacking fighters into the Citadel to defend future attacks, and then they put also a control token to show that they control the region. So let's say I managed to defeat the king. I'm not showing the combat example now, I'm going to show it later. I'm just showing that I remove the king. I'm placing up to 3 fighters to defend the Citadel, and then I indicate that now the Citadel belongs to me. If I manage to maintain control until the end of the game, then I will be, at the end of the round, I will be winning the appropriate amount of victory points. End of round 1, 4, end of round 2, 5, and all the way to round 4, which gives 7 points. So if this was the end of round 3, this player would be gaining an additional 6 victory points as indicated on the round tracker board. Defending the Citadel. Retaining control of the Citadel is difficult. Unlike other regions of the board, there is no limit to the amount of times the Citadel can be attacked, and this is indicated by the large circle below the Citadel for attacking purposes. But the location of the attack affects the total attack value, because you can attack either from this area, or from that area, or from that area. Unlimited number from this area, single time during a round from these 2 areas. So the left and right flanks of the Citadel are more vulnerable, but can only be attacked once per round. So you can send to attack either here or here. And it would make sense if these 2 are unoccupied to start from this one, because it gives you +1 to the attacker if you go to this one. If this is occupied and then you attack another time, you'll go here because this has +0, no modifier applied. But if you continue attacking, or you or another player, doesn't matter for that purpose, that means that if they can go there, which any number of people can attack there, so not only 1 minion, more than 1 minions, but they have a disadvantage because there is -1 to the attacker's attack value. The front of the Citadel can be attacked any number of times per round, but with a -1 modifier. Initiating combat. And in general, combat overall. So, to initiate combat, a player places a minion onto a vacant combat space in the area controlled by another player and announces their intentions. So, hey, I'm coming to attack you. Combat can only be initiated if the attacker has at least 1 fighter in their hand to participate. If I don't have any fighters to participate, I cannot initiate combat. The attacker selects up to 2 fighters from their hand, or up to 3 fighters, depending if they are attacking the Citadel, but for all other regions only up to 2 fighters, and they play them face down on the table to show that they are attacking the defender. The defender's forces are always visible because I'm attacking the mountains, and these spots are for defending, so I know in advance what they are defending with. The defender cannot add additional fighters to the combat from their hand at this stage. Both attacker and defender can select a single combat card from their hand and place it face down, so that they can indicate with which card they're participating in the combat if they wish. So let's say that the defending player, in this case this player, the purple, is selecting this card, and the attacking player, let's say this player, I'm putting everything on the board, but it doesn't have to be on the board just to make it fit the screen. It's off table, or on the table of the board, is participating with this fighting card, let's say. So they're fighting with this card and with this combat card. Both players then simultaneously reveal the cards and compare the combined attack value for the fighters and combat card. And the winner will be the player with the highest combined score, and the defenders always win on a tie. So let's say in this case I know that I'm attacking, and I know that the defender are defending with a value of 3 + 1, and they play this combat card. So once we're ready, I'm showing with what I'm attacking. I'm attacking with this undead dragon with a strength of 6, and we both simultaneously reveal all of our cards, both my attacking force and both of the attack cards. Okay, so focus on this one. So now let's calculate in this example the total strength. So the offensive attack is 6 plus, there is no attack value here. Typically in combat values you can see, let's say, a modifier, a 4, so it will be 6 + 4 if I played this card. But I decided to play this card because this one I had available, let's say, for the moment. So 6 plus a die roll, so I'm rolling a die, okay, and let's say I rolled 2. So my attack force would be 6 plus 2 for a total of 8 for the player taking the offense. For the player taking the defense, their defense attack value is 3 + 1, 4. They have a pair, so they gain a +1. So 4 + 1, 5, and they also played this card, so 5, 3, 4, 5, plus this card, which gives them another 1, for a total of 6. So 6 versus 8. Again, if it was a tie, the defenders would win the tie. 8 versus 6, that means that the attacking player is winning. So now let's see the combat outcome. Let's say supposedly the defender won. Let's say they haven't played this card. Let's say for the benefit of example, they have played this card, which would give them 4 plus 5, 9, and there will be 9 versus 8. If that was the case, the defender will win. If the defender wins, the attacker discards the attacking fighter and the attacking card. So the attacking fighter will go on, now I'm showing another player's color, but they would go here on the graveyard. So I would place any, let's say, any fighters taking the offense that they lost here on the graveyard. Okay, so I'm not picking up this card now, just to continue with the example. So I would take any fighters and place them on my personal board on the graveyard, and I would also discard the fighting card, but not before I see the rewards and the penalties for that. Coming on that later. But in this case, the attacker won, so there was no competition for them because, as we said, there was a total of 4 plus 1, 5 plus 1, 6 versus 8, so the attacker won. So in this case, if the attacker wins, they gain control of the area. The defender discards the defending fighters to the graveyard. That means that now, since they lost, the defenders will get to be placed on the graveyard of the defender. The attacker must move all attacking fighters. In this case I only had one, but if I had two, I would move all of my attacking fighters into the newly controlled area. Okay, so this one would move here. And we will exchange the control token with my own token to show that I gained control. So I would give that back to the pink player because they lost control. And I would put this one here to gain control. to show that I gained control. After the battle, both players resolve their combat cards, gaining the rewards based on whether they won or lost the battle. And again, keep in mind that combat cards are discarded face up in the middle of the owner's playmat, and each player only resolves their own combat card. So in this case, the player who lost here, the pink player, would focus on their card, the combat card. They would gain that if they won, 2 gold, but instead they gain this one because they lost. So as a compensation, they gain 1 resource of their choice, okay? And they put it face up on their player board. And respectively, this player, because they won, they gain the upper part, which is 1 victory point. So they will go on their victory point mat, and after discarding their combat card on the respective spot, they would gain the amount of victory points indicated on the combat card. Combat cards. Using combat cards. Combat cards represent the player's own influence as a powerful necromancer on the battlefield. Each player has an identical set of 5 combat cards with values of 0, 1, 3, 4 and a dice that bolsters the attack value in battle. The anatomy of the combat card is very simple. We have on the left the attack value. This is added to your attacking force value from your fighters attacking, in this case 3. Then you have the winning reward, which is in the green banner showing upwards, in this case 1 gold. Then we have the losing compensation. So if we lose, in this case we gain the 1 benefit depicted in the red banner, in this case 2 basic resources of our choice. Then we have some flavor graphic, and then the last thing that we have is the different type of combat cards. So once battle has been initiated, both attacker and defender must select a single combat card from their hand to use. If using the combat card featuring the dice, which is this one, that means after the card is revealed, the player rolls a single die, and they add the value showing the pips to the number of the attacking value from the cards that they committed to the battle. The rewards. Depending on the outcome of the battle, each player receives the rewards and the compensation shown on their own combat card. I only gain the rewards if I won or lost from my card, and my opponent from their own respective combat card. They gain the reward shown in the top green section for winning and the bottom red section for losing, and all combat card rewards with either gold, resources or victory points. The only exception is the bottom black section on the 0 card, which is this one, which shows a black banner, and this offers no compensation upon losing, but instead the winner is forced to discard a single fighter of their choice from those involved in the battle to the graveyard, even if it means a region is left undefended. Discarding combat cards. After battle, the used combat card is discarded face up. So let's say I use this battle card, then I need to discard it on top of my discard pile. Only the most recent combat card is visible, and players are not allowed to look through opponents' discarded combat cards. And once all combat cards have been played, all 5 of those, then the player immediately takes all 5 of them back into their hand. But let's say I'm somewhere in between. Players can always refresh their combat cards earlier than that by placing a minion in this spot here, which allows them to take any played combat cards back into their hand so that they have them available for future combats. End of round. Once all players have assigned their minions, the round is over. At the end of the round, players first score for each of the areas they control, adding the points earned from the structures with an additional victory point for each cover tile in the stack. If the Citadel is occupied, that player gains the victory point displayed on the round tracker. Again, we are on the first round, that will be 4. Or in the last and 4th round, this will be 7. You retrieve all the minions back to their player mat. You return any fighter cards from their graveyard, any fighter cards that you have played and they have ended up in your graveyard. You take them back into your hand, all of those from the graveyard. We are necromancers after all. We clear and redraw the 5 buildable structures. So these 5 which are now not shown but they are below, your main board will be discard and 4 new will be drawn, and you progress the turn tracker to the next round, which means now we're going to play, for example, round 2. Okay? We allocate the turn order for the next round, and then we continue with the next round. So turn order. Going sooner in Crown of Ash allows player to preferential access to worker placement spaces and raisable fighters. Going later gives them advantage to conquering and building, so they have to always balance out between the two. For the first round, turn order is decided by shuffling the player turn tokens and randomly placing them onto the turn tracker. Subsequent rounds are decided by the player with the lowest victory points at the end of the round. If the lowest score are tied, the player with the lowest potential victory points from the currently controlled structures determine order. And if scores are still the tie, a high dice roll between the tied players determines the player who decides. For accessibility purposes, some players may find changing turn order difficult to track. In this case, it might be beneficial to keep the turn order in a clockwise direction, and the player with the lowest victory point chooses the starting player every time. End game scoring. When to score. At the end of the 4th round, the game is over and final scoring begins. Players score for the areas they control as with each other previous round, but also they score victory points for resources in the storage area and for the fate card. Resource points. Players gain 1 additional victory point for every 3 matching resources and for every 2 gold they have in the storage area at the end of the game. So again, let's focus here, and let's say that this player had these resources. 3 ash, 1 blood, 1 bone, and 2 gold. They would gain 1 victory point for the 2 gold and 1 more victory point for the 3 matching ash resources, for a total of 2 additional victory points. Also, we have the fate card. At the start of the game, each player, if you remember, they were dealt a secret fate card that offers additional victory point at the end of the game. Each player's fate card displays two kinds of fighters, and these award additional victory points at the end of the game when those kind of fighters are raised. Players gather all the fighters raised through the game from their board, their graveyard, and their hand. So all the cards they have in their possession, no matter their location, and they separate them by kind. The fighter kinds do not displayed here. So in this case, that would be the sulfur yellow and the red blood, not displayed on my fate card. I would discard them and ignore them. The Roman numerical displayed at the bottom of each card indicates which tier the deck they are drawn from, and they are total to give the total victory point. So let's say again, this is my fate card. I only care about the black ash and the white bone fighter cards. I would gain all of my fighter cards from all of the regions which I control from my graveyard and from my hand, and I will separate them by kind. In this case, I don't care for yellow and red. Okay, so these I discard them, put them aside for the moment. So then I focus on the ones that they are displayed on my fate card, white and black, for the corresponding ash and bone resources. So I have the numerical values from the respective tiers at the bottom, and I would tally them to get my score from those, again, only matching my fate card. So it will be 1 plus 2, 3, plus 1, 4, plus 3, 7, for a total of 7 additional victory points belonging to the colors and the kinds matching my fate card that I was dealt at the beginning of the game. The player with the highest victory point total wins the game and is claimed as the crown owner for the Crown of Ash for him. So basically, if there is a tie, in the result of a tie, players also score the 2 kinds of fighters that they were not included on the fate card. So in this case, if there was a tie, for example, I would also need to count, in addition to the tiebreaker with those, I would count also the other type of fighters that they were not included in my fate card. So I would also count the red and the yellow for me as well, and then this will be the tiebreaker. The game also comes with a solo mode and AI players with a solo deck, and it's actually an automa which has a very interesting, simple but very interesting solo mode with an automa. This can be played either if you're playing solo against a virtual player, an automa player, but also the AI can be added in a 2 or 3 player games, and in this scenario the AI is unlikely to win but instead acts as a buffer between players. This will be recommended for new players playing the game against experienced players or for players that want less direct conflict, for example. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know about Crown of Ash. So let's move back up. Crown of Ash. What an unexpected surprise. If you like games like, I don't know, maybe Dune Imperium, which is a game that really gives straightforward contests in the players with worker placement and deck building, this game has a completely different feel, but I think it will scratch the same, I don't know, desire, if you wish. Blending very well with extremely simple way, but very meaningful, deck building and worker placement in a fast pace with a lot of interesting options, a lot of resource management and deck management, which doesn't bog down with many details and, I don't know, additional things to remember and additional rules to remember, etc. I think it's geared towards having conflict, fun, in a meaningful, strategic way, and this really delivers. In the game you have to really always make a choice whether you want to go faster with your minions in order to gain the better spots from other players, if you're first in turn order that is, or I don't know, recruit and resurrect the best units or what you want to be in your pool of units from the ones available. Or you're a bit later on the turn order in order to be able to see what the other player is doing and then take opportunities and attack. So attacking and defending is done really well in this game. It really offers a very fast, tense, meaningful, but I would say important and well-calculated way of defending and attacking respectively. I didn't feel that it was anyway the draw of the luck, because you can also monitor the cards of your opponent, so you can see what cards they have played from the combat cards, because we all have the same 5 combat cards, so you know what they're going to be using as modifiers. You see what they're defending with, and you also see the top card of the discard pile, so you can really plan ahead when you want to really snatch a region and some structures out of your opponents. The game has a lot of back and forth. I really like the way it's done. It's done fast, simple. It doesn't have any take that element, but of course there are going to be conflicts with different players going and I don't know, structures and regions switching hands a lot. But the timing is important, because some structures are going to be more valuable. You need to have an eye for the Citadel, because it offers a lot of victory points. Attacking with group of units is important, because if you attack with 2 units of the same kind, you get a +1 modifier in your attack, and if you attack with 3 units of the same kind, let's say sulfur-based units, yellow, you're going to get a +2 modifier, and this +1 or +2 can really make the difference, because more or less the players develop together, getting steadily stronger units, because they can afford from the different resource management and resources that they get from different buildings, because they send the units, their minions, to gain resources, and then they can resurrect stronger units, and then they can use them to attack other players. It makes sense, it works, it delivers, and gives a very meaningful, successful, full and high enjoyable gaming experience in a nutshell. This is the last benefit I want to mention for this game. It really doesn't overstay its welcome. It lasts as it should last. The timing is and the amount, the gameplay session lasts as long as I wanted it to last. It delivers fast gameplay, it delivers a lot of replayability, it delivers a lot of meaningful choices, a lot of direct interaction between players, and a lot of different ways to play the game, depending on which structures you build, which units you recruit, and which direction you take. I think it's highly entertaining. I do recommend it. It also offers a solo mode, which is an important aspect to mention, because solo modes usually it's typically trying to beat your own score, or if you're lucky, an automa, so that you can play against another player, a virtual player. What this game does, and is also meaningful, you can also use the automa as a virtual player in a two-player game. So it's like playing versus three in a virtually three-player game. Two physical players and an automa that will give you a three-player session, or you can be three physical players and play it with an automa so that you can have a full house. Again, this is nice. So very well designed, a lot of options, very interesting take on fast, clever but robust delivery of worker placement, deck building and fighting for control in a very, very unique way. I would love to see the game's theme and universe being taken and enriched into other directions, because I really love the intro, and I highly encourage you to get to read behind the story and the universe of the Crown of Ash, because it looks fascinating. So there you go, this is Crown of Ash.